Welcome back to Life in Richmond with Hank Ballinger. Today we have a special guest, and I really want to encourage you to watch this. A guy that kind of a triple treat here today. He's my friend, he's a realtor, interesting, and an entrepreneur. Many times it's hard to get those last two in the same person because many realtors never become entrepreneurs. Odd scenario, they're around real estate, but most of them never build wealth in real estate. Today we have Ross Cummins here with us today. Like I said, he's a good friend. Ross, appreciate you coming on. So today I want to ask you, just give us a little bit about your background.
Well, so my background in general is, my name is Ross Cummins. I was not born here in Richmond, but I've lived in Richmond for pretty much my whole life. I got into real estate on my 18th birthday, and so that was about 9 years ago now. Got into it as a young kid just because I knew I was never going to have that low of a cost of living ever again, you know, getting wife and kids and all the things. But also I just really liked investments and strategy and just honestly the thought of being able to not have to work for the rest of my life, you know. So I got into real estate at 18 and been doing it for 9 years now. On average, we sell about 100 to 120 homes per year, probably around $25 to $35 million a year in sales volume. Keeps us pretty busy, but it's also helped fund all the rental properties that we've bought. So now we've got 93 long-term units with 44 more under contract, and we've got 21 short-term rental units.
Wow.
On top of other businesses and stuff like that. But business funding other businesses, you know what I mean?
Good deal.
That's kind of my background in a nutshell. I didn't go to college, didn't do the typical approach that everybody probably recommended, but either way, that's what got us here.
Now you said some things that's really interesting. One, you said you were 18 when you become a realtor. Mm-hmm. Why a realtor at 18?
Well, I wanted to be an attorney, but it required so much reading in school, and I was just very opinionated and loved being right. So I figured being an attorney was going to be the best way to do it. But I actually took the real estate course classes while I was in high school. I went to Madison Central here in town, and they offered the real estate classes for the first year on my senior year. And so I took the classes then, but I graduated at 17, so I was still too young to actually be able to take the classes. So I didn't know whether I was going to do anything with them or not, but I got into construction through a guy that I knew from church and started working with him and saw that he was building houses and selling houses, and I just thought, you know, like this was kind of the perfect combination of all the different things that I wanted to do, but also I already had the school out of the way. You know, I just had to pass this one test. Right. So not to say that it was a lazy choice, but it was an easier route option.
No bar exam, right?
No.
Yeah. All right.
Exactly.
Good deal. So you became a realtor at 18, and you now sell how much per year?
I would say it's probably, I don't know that exact number, but I'd say it's probably around like $35 million a year in sales volume. I would say our average sales price is about $330,000 times 110, 120 homes per year. So you could do the math, but I don't know it right off.
Yeah. Now, one thing I want to stress, it seems by listening to Ross, okay, I get out of high school, I'm 18, I become a realtor, I'm going to sell millions of dollars. Is that just easy? Is that just cake, or is there some work to that?
Well, there's a lot of work that goes into it, but there's also a lot of passion that goes into it. Like, not to say stereotypically, I like turning houses into homes, you know, like some stereotypical realtor, may I say. But for me, once I got into real estate, at the beginning, it kind of was like that. Like, I was willing to work with anybody that was willing to, like, you know, let me sell their house, basically. But it really kind of transitioned pretty quickly because I started showing homes to clients, and, you know, the carpet wasn't the right color, or we had to, you know, wallpaper or just whatever, that they just weren't feeling it. And so I have a very logical thinking mind, I like to think. And so like the emotional side of real estate, I wasn't really jiving as much with. And so it was actually a lot harder for me because I didn't care what color the carpet was. If I could get it changed for $2,500 and you thought that was a steal of a price, why don't we just, move some things around and get it done? Right. But I started working with the investor-minded client, and so I actually specialize in new construction and investment. So that's kind of like what more or less my niche. And finding that niche was kind of what fueled being able to get to 100, 120 homes a year. There were many years where I sold, 15 to 45 homes, but now I've built a team and I've built administrative staff and sales agents, and, we've built it up to that point. It wasn't overnight by any stretch of the imagination.
It's taken you 9 years to get
For sure. I actually thought it was like, we were talking about it on the way over here, I thought it was about 7 or 8 years until I actually did the math on it. It's been 9 years now, since July. Goes by quick.
Now, again, it's not easy, and we do want to encourage, there may be many people who would like to get out of school, maybe not go to college, maybe that's not the course for them. It's not for everybody. I didn't go to college, you didn't go to college, so there is hope. So for those who may want to get out of school and may want to become a realtor or broker, what advice would you give them?
To be honest with you, it's not really something you have to jump 1,000% into. When I actually jumped into real estate, I was still working construction a little bit as well, because I needed something to kind of help me bridge the gap, because I knew I wasn't just going to get into it and everybody be like, oh, sell my house, please sell my house, help me buy one. I knew it wasn't going to be that simple. So when I got into it, it was a little bit more of a transition. Yeah. So I've helped a couple other agents join our company now and be able to make that transition from going to being not an agent at all to a part-time agent to a full-time agent. It's just, you have to realize that input equals output. And if you're not willing to put in the work, then you're not going to get it. So it's a tough thing for some people because they want to get into it, and it's like, oh, well, if I build it, they will come, kind of thing, Right. But you really have to put in the work, and the weird thing about real estate is what I'm doing today is what I'm getting paid on 90 days from today, because there's a process that you have to go through with these people to be able to help them, figure out what they're looking for and get it under contract, and then, it's 45 to 60 days from that point, even once you get under contract.
Yeah.
So
now, a key point there that Ross talked about, I don't care who you talk about, anybody that has built wealth and has accomplished whatever their goals are, writing a book, becoming a doctor, whatever, anybody that has set goals and accomplished those goals will give you some of the same advice that Ross just gave you. It is not easy. You have to dig, you have to just keep on and push. It's never easy. The same story from anybody. So what I want to tell those people, if you're trying to get out of the factory, maybe you just graduated high school, you want to become an entrepreneur, anybody can do it. For nobody will it be easy. It will be tough. If you can become an entrepreneur, but you've got to dig. Now, sometimes going to college, going that route would actually be easier. Mm-hmm. So it's not like it just, you get out of school, you become a realtor, you start selling millions and millions of dollars worth of houses, you just start buying real estate. Not going to happen. You're going to have to go after it. You're going to have to reach and get it. So it can happen, but you've got to make it happen, and it can happen. So
it took me 6 months in the business to get my first sale, and my first sale was $22,500. That's how much the house sold for.
Nice.
It was not pretty.
Yeah. So why did you stay in after 6 months and one sale?
That was actually the one that really kind of caught on with me a little bit more, was like, this house was a dud. I mean, it was a dud, $22,500. Like, you can't get a whole lot for that. But it was in a rougher area and needed a lot of work. And I had been showing for the past 6 months all these clients and showing them these homes and trying to help them find their dream home and, for their forever home and whatever. And this was the first one where I went in and he said, I don't care what it looks like. It's a numbers game. Let's see how much it's going to cost to fix it up. Let's see what it's going to be worth after it's fixed up. Now, what are they asking? And then kind of reverse engineering the numbers from there to where he didn't care. It wasn't an emotional decision. It was a logical, numbers-based decision. And then he also told me throughout the process how much he expects to pay for all of these different things and what his process looked like, and if he was going to refinance it afterwards, and how much money he was going to pull out of it, and what projections he needed to be able to hit, and how I needed to be able to justify those. So he confided so much information in me because I was going to be an advocate for him that I learned a strategy that day. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, well, if I just go find more options that fit this strategy, I have sales. Right. Then my bills are paid.
Right.
And so then I just kept trying to find more and more and more options, so more and more people would tell me their strategy and what they were looking for and what their angle was. And about 5 years into the business, I kind of was able to marry together this hybrid version of all of these different things that I wanted. And I'm one of the first people that gets into somebody's property whenever they're thinking about selling it a lot of the times. And if I've got that ammunition in my back pocket to where I can say, here's our needle in the haystack price. If you want to put it, really high, you can put it at market value, or we can do an investor purchase right here, right now. And here's what I would be able to give you as a, cash offer or a finance offer for that property. That's a big thing whenever you're talking about selling a house, because a lot of people, they don't care to get every single dollar out of it. Sometimes they just want it to be an easier, smooth transition at the end of the day. And so I like the logical side of things, and I was like, well, I don't care if this is a $22,000 house. I can take the same margins and percentages and all the other expenses and do that on 200, 300, 500, $1 million houses even. You don't really find a lot of those to flip around here, but knock on wood, maybe I'll find one this week.
Maybe so. Was the guy buying the $22,500 house, was he buying it to do a fix and flip, or was he buying it to rent?
Fix and hold, and I think they still own it to this day.
He renting it or living in it?
Bought it to rent, used his 401k money for it, bought it, 22.5. I think he had like 10 or 15 in it, fixing it up. Nothing like crazy, but it rented for like $850 a month. Yeah. So that was doubling the 1% rule kind of deal, So it wasn't like, one deal and you get out of the rat race. Right. It was just one stepping stone, you know what I mean? But I was on the hunt to find him that next stepping stone too.
That's right. That's right. See, another interesting
with a bigger
thing.
Commission.
There you go. For any of those who may want to buy a house of that nature, 25. Are there a lot of houses out there around the 25,000, 30, 50,000?
That's a tough one, honestly. It's hard to find anything worth anything under 100 because our cost of building has just gone through the roof, and also the cost of developing has gone through the roof. Mm-hmm. So the ground that the house is sat on has gotten more expensive, and the materials to build or repair that house have gotten more expensive. Supply and demand, that has gone up as well. So I haven't sold a $22,000 house since then, probably. But I mean, the number of foreclosures and stuff like that has just dwindled so much over the past 5, 6, 7 years, to where when I got in, it was helping so many people like fix, flip, burr, do all of those different strategies. And then the market kind of took a shift to where new construction was a little bit more of the avenue that I decided to take. So I started with investment, but then I found new construction as one of those. When I started getting all the strategies, new construction was kind of one that met so much of the criteria. It was a higher entry level. You had to have a little bit more money to do the new construction stuff because the bank terms and all of that. It was more of a speculation investment. So transition kind of from fix and flip to a little bit more of the new construction side of things. And then now it's kind of a little bit of a hybrid option because there's only like one flip per month that comes on the market that's any good. Wow. So you kind of have to dig for those. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's a numbers game. I talk to 100 people. Odds are I'm going to find one that's willing to sell.
Right. Did you hear the number? 100. I've said it before. If you want to buy a house, a lot of times you got to look at 100. Make an offer on 10. Get a response on 3. Buy 1.
Maybe. It may not be the right one. You may need to dig and find 200, but I promise you, if you go through 200, you're going to know those strategies like backwards and forwards. And when you find something, you'll be able to jump on it.
You'll know the numbers are right. They click, and you gain experience every time you run those numbers. And you just got to be relentless. You got to go after it. Anybody can do it, but you do have to be relentless.
And a lot of times I think once you get that first one out of the way, it really does make it a lot easier, because there's just this fear, this stigma built around, like spending that much money. I've never been raised to spend that much money, and I wasn't either, but at the same time, you kind of have to stretch yourself financially and just go with your gut and know, I don't have any plans of selling this place, so as long as my holding costs stay the same and my income stays the same, I'm good to go with this, and I'm not just making cash flow. I'm getting appreciation, depreciation, and tax incentives. I mean, you can't beat it, and pay down. But
there's all kinds of perks. What perks are there to becoming a realtor or broker?
Becoming a realtor, I feel like I said, you get to be the first one at the table sometimes with the people that are interested in selling. So I feel like that's a perk that I've gotten to the table with a lot of people that I'm able to create win-win situations for them. And so I'm setting myself up to be in a winning situation, but I also know all those strategies to make it a win for them as well. So the perk to being a realtor would potentially be being there first, having a lot of the data that you can dig into to really make sure that you are just sharpening your axe. You know what I mean? Just making sure that you know your stuff and you're not going, because if you don't know your stuff going into these things, people are going to see right through that, because there's a bunch of $2 millionaires out there. Right. I mean, they think they've got it, but they just don't. They might say a few of the right things, but they're not willing to put in the actual effort. So what was the question again specifically?
What are the perks to become a realtor or broker? I know you and I have done some deals, and when you buy property, there's some incentive that you have by being a realtor that makes it easier for you to buy property.
Yeah, I mean, if you have your real estate license, you're gonna, if there's a commission being paid, you're the one being paid the commission. So if you're gonna buy a property, you can use that commission towards your down payment, basically. I mean, if I can get 3 or 6% off of a property, that's just a no-brainer all day. And it's just kind of that delayed gratification aspect of it, because if I take that quick payout, there's been a lot of quick payouts that I've taken over the years, Hank. There's, without realizing it, where I've done a quick flip or I've sold somebody a quick flip, that now 2020 hindsight looking back, I'm like, I should have done creative financing. I should have talked to more banks. I should have figured some way to have made that work. Instead of getting a $5,000 check, I made someone else a $50,000 check. But at the same time, I think that service first, servanthood leadership, I guess is what it's called. I just think that that's also pretty important, but you learn lessons when there's zeros behind them. You know what I mean? Yeah. So there's a lot of 2020 hindsights, but if it was something to where you're able to partner up with somebody and say, hey, I'm going to throw a commission in towards this, or you're buying something and you're taking a commission, but you're putting it towards your down payment. Either way, you have a little bit of flexibility there, just depending on how your broker operates and all the other aspects of it. But depending on each specific situation, there can be a lot of benefits to it. Yeah. Plus, if you're selling a property, like let's just say I had a property right now that I was like, I'm in a tight spot and I need to sell this and I need to sell it for top dollar. I mean, I'm literally saving a commission because I'm paying myself to do it. So I'm paying myself an equity, basically.
Right.
So it works out pretty well.
It really does. Now, there's a lot to unpack there. Let's say you want to become a realtor, but you also want to become an entrepreneur, which very few realtors do, but let's see how that they could kind of help each other. Let's say you're a realtor, so as Ross said earlier, you're first to the table. You know these deals because you can look at the MLS, multiple listing service. You can look at those before anybody else and you see those. You have first dibs on them. But if you understand creative financing, let's say you're a realtor, but you never want to become an entrepreneur. You just want to sell property. You still need to understand creative financing, because a deal that wasn't working, you could understand creative financing and get the buyer and the seller to figure out a different way to structure the deal. And then you're still going to make a commission because you have figured out a way for the deal to happen. So as just being a realtor, all realtors really need to understand creative financing. So it'd be very helpful.
I don't think a lot of them do. I think a lot of times if you ask if there's like I've been asked before if owner financing is an option, and before I actually like understood what it was, I was hesitant to even take it to my clients because I didn't know, I didn't want to admit that I didn't know something, but also at the same time, like it could, like, there's just 2020 hindsight. There's just so many situations that it could have paid off. I mean, like I bought a property off of a guy. He owner financed it for me, actually. He had built it himself. It was a great property. He just really didn't like dealing with the people. And rates are a little bit higher right now. And so basically he didn't need the money. He just wanted a little bit of like cash flow, basically. And so I was actually able to structure a deal to where I bought the property off of him. I used my commission to go towards down payment, and then he owner financed it at a rate that was below market value, but also he was making cash flow as if I was paying him as the bank. So he's making his cash flow and he doesn't have to deal with people because I pay him on the first of every month.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it was a win-win to where I got a property to where I can get phantom income off of it, and I'm making him the bank.
Right.
And that was a pretty quick closing too.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, because no bank involved.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's really nice. Phantom income is when you look at the income that you're not putting in your pocket, like cash flow, you put in your pocket every month. Phantom income is the appreciation, the depreciation, the equity you gain, the tax write-offs. There's just a lot of phantom income that comes with real estate. Doesn't come with a lot of other assets, monetary assets like stocks, bonds, T-bills, cryptocurrency, any of that stuff. You don't get the perks like you get with real estate. So real estate's a great game to be in.
For sure.
I want to jump over here. We've been talking a little bit about the realtor side. Now I want to jump to the entrepreneur side. Now you're an entrepreneur and you have a lot of real estate too. Tell us a little bit about your real estate and what kinds of real estate you have.
What kinds of real estate I have? I kind of keep a hybrid option between just cash flowing properties. So I specialize in new construction and investment. So the tried and true already rented property and, you know, just kind of holding it long term. That's more of my tried and true method. But then I also have the new construction aspect, which is a little bit more speculation, but at the same time, it takes a little bit more money to get into the new construction stuff because, you know, you have to have a little bit more money up front, all the things. But with new construction, I get 12-month interest-only financing. So for that first year, if I build it in 4 months, I have 8 more months of just a primo cash flow, cash cow period, basically. And then, you know, you can refinance that. And like, honestly, with the BRRRR strategy is one that a lot of people use, and that's what we use for this aspect, where you buy it, you kind of raise your rents and all that, and then you can refinance it to pull your money out. But we actually kind of timed the market pretty well with the COVID, the pandemic and all that, to where we actually built quite a few duplexes. Nice. And they were brand new construction, you know, top dollar rent and all of that. And whenever we had built these, we were able to refinance it to where we pulled basically every dollar out of it that we had in it. And so we had all of these assets that we don't really have any down payment tied up into, but we're getting a pretty good chunk of change cash flow wise. And since they're new construction, you attract really good quality tenants, right. You attract higher rent, and also typically they stay a little bit longer because they're nice, they're new, and they have garages. Yeah. So we typically deal with like I wouldn't say it's a C type property. I would say if it is a C, it's a C plus and a B minus, maybe B plus at the best. And then like our new construction stuff is probably like a B plus, because we don't have amenities like pools and, you know, stuff like right. that. And then I've actually done a little bit of short-term rentals in the past year. I'll say me and my wife bought a motel down at Lake Cumberland. And so we basically bought the motel and we converted each unit into an Airbnb, basically. Nice. So it kind of functions on its own for the most part once you set up systems and processes. She would probably laugh at me saying it functions on its own right now because we're not done with it yet, but just part of the process. So like for me, I had both of those two strategies were long term, and then one of them was short term, just because I wanted to have a little bit more legs to stand on, a few more pillars, just in case things ever got rocky. But we've also got a couple of like warehouses where we've actually taken just a vacant space and we've created a business out of it, to where essentially we bought like a strip mall of warehouses, and we rented a few of them to be able to make the payment, and then we had 3 of them left, and so we actually put our own businesses in those, to where our expenses are a lot lower. So we have my brokerage is in one, and then we have an event center in one that we rent out for birthday parties and showers, and we've even had a couple weddings in there. And then the other one we have is a man cave, to where it's like a gym and community hangout sports bar kind of area, but no, we don't serve food or alcohol. So it's kind of like we short-term rent the space on like a month-to-month basis for that one. So we've, in the past year or two, we've really tried to kind of get a few more legs. But there's a common denominator with all of them, is we try to have a little bit more control of them and control from afar, to where we're not having to be operators in that business every single day. And then the businesses that we do have, that we have to be in every single day, we have incredible guys and girls that help us. I mean, we've been blessed with the best people, honestly, and that kind of has taken the business to a whole new high.
It does. A few things there I want to touch on, just go a little bit deeper dive on. One is, you said you've got a team around you. As you're building wealth and you become an entrepreneur, and you're wanting more time, you can always, and this sounds crazy, you can always get more money. You can never get more time. Time is a valuable commodity. So as you're building wealth, that's why you want to build your wealth. So you have the time in life to do the things you want to do. You can travel, you can help others, you can build additional businesses. It's not about just having more stuff. It's about having the time to do the things you want to do. It's very valuable. And then something else that Ross touched on a while ago, he said something about he built some properties, and as he built those, then he was able to take money out of those. That's easy to miss that, what all that means. When you take money out of those properties, let's say he's got $100,000 worth of usable equity he can pull out of that property. When Ross pulls that equity out of that property, he pays 0 taxes. It's not earned income, so it's not taxed like a W-2 or an employee, and it's not portfolio income like stocks, bonds, stock market. So there is no taxes. You take this money out and you pay no taxes. So it's really great to have equity in something, and you pull that equity out and use it. You're 0% taxed, and you could even put it down on another property and then use that equity. So you take $100,000 out of one property, buy another property. You didn't lose the $100,000. You just transferred it from one property to another. You still have the $100,000, but you now have another property. Very valuable.
And you can do a line of credit on that equity, or you can do a secondary position on that equity. Right. So with a higher rate environment, a lot of times people aren't wanting to take that cash out and raise that rate a lot higher because their payment's going to be higher. But if you have that kind of locked in at a, like we've got some that are 2.5%, 3.5% rates, you know what I mean? Like, you can't beat that.
Right.
So if you're able to pledge that or get a line of credit against that equity, either one, it's a winning strategy. But what do you got to do first? Buy real estate.
Buy real estate. You got to get,
because if you don't have it, you're not paying down, you're not getting the depreciation, you're not getting the appreciation. You're basically losing out on 4 ends of the spectrum rather than winning on 4 ends of the spectrum.
Right. Yeah, I love what one guy said one time. Somebody was kind of complaining about the way he did business, and he looked at him and he said, "Well, how much real estate do you have, and how many businesses you got?" And the guy said, "Well, none." He said, "Well, I like the way that I'm doing it better than the way that you're not doing it." Mm-hmm. So again, just like Ross is saying, get in the game. That's all you have to do. Get in the game. You're going to make mistakes. I've made mistakes. Ross has probably made mistakes. Everybody that gets in it's going to make mistakes. That's how you learn. But you will profit in the future. You can go broke, so you kind of got to be careful. Make sure you run your numbers. Make sure that it looks good. Would you encourage other people to become entrepreneurs? Now, you get out of school, you go to college, you kind of have a course set for you. You can become a doctor, you can get in business, whatever. An entrepreneur, it's kind of, there is no book that says, well, here's what an entrepreneur does.
Exactly. That's what makes it being an entrepreneur, right?
Would you encourage that for somebody else?
I would, and before really like saying like entrepreneur and putting like, everybody should do this, I would say you got to get really, really intentional about what your objectives and what your priorities are. Because if you have, like, if you're a high dollar attorney or a surgeon, you already have a specialty, and you may enjoy doing some other things, but you really like your specialty and you don't want to quit that and do it full time. So like there's multiple different ways of being an entrepreneur without being a full-time, all-in entrepreneur. And typically that's just a stepping stone, because once you get bit with it, you want a little bit more. But like what I have a lot of people that want to get into it, and they want to, they've got their good job and they want to get into real estate. And a lot of times, sometimes getting your first property you want to get before you get into real estate, because commission-based job, they want you to have about 2 years in a commission-based job before they'll ever give you a loan. And then your first 2 years in a commission-based job typically aren't your best paid years in a commission-based job. Yeah. So like, I mean, I've got a lot of people, like right now, we're doing some new construction duplexes here in town. And so we're building these duplexes and the rents are really good. But at the same time, you have to have 15 to 25% down for a brand new construction duplex typically. But if you're looking at it through an entrepreneurial glasses, you could look at that and use an FHA loan, get away with a 3.5% down payment, which they're like, for easy numbers, they're $335,000. So 3.5% down on that, 10 grand maybe. So your closing costs maybe $7,000. So if you can't grind for 6 months to save up $16,000-$17,000 and work 2, 3, 5 jobs, driving Uber and Instacart and doing all the different things to make that nut happen, if you get that nut, then you're able to basically rent out one side, and then shoot, maybe you're in high school, college, whatever, you're young like I was getting into this, you can even rent your rooms on the one side, and you can turn that liability into an asset. Yeah. And then after being in that asset for 4 to 6 months, you could potentially refinance it and go buy another one with 3.5% down. There's people that do it with FHA, with VA, with USDA, all these different programs, to where they'll get in with the lowest money out of pocket to just go ahead and start building phantom income all the way around. Yeah. So it doesn't have to be like I'm getting my real estate license. It could be as simple as I'm going to get so good at my job that I can just start paying for this on the side. And then there's really good management companies like that you can find as well if that's not your niche. Because my cost of getting stuff taken care of is going to be a lot less than somebody who's calling, some big company to come in and unclog a drain, and they've got a $250 service call or something like that. Does that answer the question?
Oh, yeah. Got one other question. Now, this is more of a macroeconomics question. Last week, Jerome Powell, who's the head of the Federal Reserve, he's kind of the guy that either raises the prime rate, what's called the Fed funds rate, or lowers it. And all loans from all banks is tied to the Fed funds rate. So if he raises the Fed funds rate, which he's done like 10 out of the last 11 times prior to last Wednesday, he left it where it was at. It didn't go up nor down. So now 10 out of the last 12 times he raised it. But last Wednesday he didn't. So what do you think, what do you see in the future for interest rates, which is kind of to the point, it makes it to where people either can't afford to buy a home or can't if the interest rate goes higher. So what do you see in the future?
I mean, to be just from like all the macroeconomic level, I mean, I would assume that we still have another rate hike or two this year, like another 0.25 basis points, probably each time if I had to guess. And that's not to like scare anybody or anything like that, but it's just the economic situation that we're in. They're trying to honestly put us in a worse economy and just trying to kind of curb inflation in all the different ways that they can. But also, like, stereotypically, historically, whatever you want to call it, around election season, from what I have seen in the past 9 years, rates typically tend to go down around election season. So I would assume for the rest of the year we can expect high rates, not really like historically high, but high compared to where they've been in the past few years. I think they're going to stay about where they're at, maybe kind of go up or down just a hair until maybe at least around spring or summer of next year. And I'd say they'll probably start tapering back down a little bit. But what that says is not wait. Right. Not, oh, we need to wait until rates come back down because that's what Ross the Realtor said. Right. Like that's not what it's all about, because guess what happens? When rates go back down, we have all this backlog of all these people that are interested in buying a house, wanting to buy a house, wanting to buy a secondary home, wanting to buy their first investment property, but it doesn't make sense payment-wise. Right. So as soon as rates come back down, that market now floods with a lot of people wanting to buy those, and the inventory amount is still going to be the same. And so it's simple supply and demand. The price will go up. So if you want to wait until that happens to make sure you get the best payment, cool. But if you can bite the bullet and that payment works, or that it still cash flows well, I think buying into that now is going to be really important, because you can refinance when those rates go lower later on. But if you don't buy it now, you're not going to have that opportunity to later on whenever rates do get low. You're just going to be sitting on money, and then you're going to have to pay a lot more for that next property when it comes up.
Yeah. Yeah, so I really like that point. Don't wait. If you look at a property and it still cash flows, it doesn't matter really where the interest rate is at. If it's going to cash flow and make sense to get into it, pull the trigger, get it. Now, obviously, with the interest rate going higher, that does make some of the properties that you looked at when the interest rate was at 3% and now it's at 8%, some of those doesn't cash flow now. But if the cash flows and it's still a good deal, still a good time to pull the trigger.
Yeah, and the 1% rule's pretty close to not working anymore, honestly. Just with the rates right now, it's hard to cash flow anything. Like, we're typically seeing rates around 8 to 8.5 sometimes in our local market. So it's hard to put cash flow much past 8, and especially if you're doing millions of dollars in real estate. For the cash flow that we were doing it for 3 years ago versus now, it's a different ball game.
It's a different ball
game.
But
you also, if you had property 10 years ago to transition it to 3 years ago, that was a huge thing. And what goes around comes around. I think history repeats itself. Right. Not saying we'll see the exact same thing again, but I think we'll see something very similar in the next couple of decades, obviously.
Yeah, think so. Well, appreciate you coming on. Do you have anything else you would like to leave just quickly for the audience?
Not necessarily. I didn't really know what to expect going on to this by any means, but I think one of the things that I wish that somebody had told me was, like, just from an early age, that input equals output, but not as simple as that. I just think that a lot of people get into real estate with the rose-colored glasses of, I'll be able to make my own schedule, I'll be able to have a flexible life and just do all the things. But I remember a statistic from a few years ago. There were 3,300 members of our local board of realty, and 62% of them sold 2 homes or less in a whole calendar year. Wow. So we're in a business with a lot of people that are able to be, stay-at-home moms or homemakers or want to be investors or, just buying a house or two and, all of that. So it's not necessarily super difficult to stand out. You just have to be willing to put in the work. And if you're willing to put in the work for long enough, you'll have the money to be able to start funding those investments. And it just took a little while for that to really click for me, but it's the most fun thing in the world now, because I like to say I was able to retire at 21 because that was the year that our income through passive income, covered our expenses and then some. So, like, I like to think that, like, you're never going to get a sales pitch from me, because I don't want to give anyone a sales pitch. I'm doing this because I enjoy what I'm doing, and the second that I stop enjoying it, I'm not going to do it. Right. So
you can choose to do something else.
Exactly, and I think that's the freedom that real estate provides for everybody, and that's why I would, like, for anybody who just thinks, oh, that's not for me, I'm just an average Joe, or I just have a factory job, or just doing something over here, like, that guy's been fed some silver spoon, that guy's got some huge education or degree. I did not go to college. I have no degree. I was not fed from a silver spoon. I moved out when I was 17 years old. And when I moved out, I moved into an apartment complex, and I said, this is insane how much money I'm paying in rent every single month towards absolutely nothing. And 5 years after that, I came back and I bought the building.
That's one of the apartment complexes you now own.
That's the one that I bought from you
Pretty
guys.
impressive,
Yeah.
Awesome.
And so that was just kind of the transition that I had to make on my own in my own head. And now that I have made that transition, I'm trying to bring as many people with me as I can.
Awesome.
And so we've got an amazing set of guys on our sales team, on our maintenance team, you know, just everything that really help us to be able to get all of this stuff together and keep the big hamster wheel running, baby.
Keep it going, keep it going. Well, Ross, listen, we appreciate you coming on. All those people, hopefully you get a lot of content out of today's interview. There is so much hope. Listen, anybody, I don't care who you are, you have the grit, you can become redneck rich. Thank you. See you on the next video.